Jasper Moore.
Aloha.
Jasper, thank you for joining us. First of all, before I get to the typical opening question, could you give us a little brief introduction of yourself?
Yeah, Jasper Moore. I've lived on the Big Island since 1982. I'm a licensed general contractor. I've worked in Kulani and corrections, putting together community programs with the inmates to rebuild the teachers' cottages at Nahaleho and Honoka'a. This is a good many years ago. I was manager of Hawaiian Paradise Farm, second largest bird of paradise farm in the world. I was manager at Topaswan Lumber Yard in Mountain View. Owned a restaurant in Hilo called Jasper's Special Cafe. Yeah, I've been kicking around the island for a while.
Okay, good. Well, with all this experience and having worked in all these different areas, why do you want to become mayor?
Why do I want to be mayor? Well, because I'm very concerned about the direction of the island. I'm concerned about our budget. I'm concerned about many things, and I wasn't seeing them addressed. I'm a person that goes to the council meetings. When I see an issue that I'm concerned about, I give testimony. I'm involved. I also feel that it's my responsibility to be involved. I often ask, we have the Statue of Liberty, but I'd like to know what the Statue of Responsibility would look like, because it seems that we're not given the opportunity to be responsible in our lives today in many ways. We're not responsible to determine whether we can build a safe house. We're not responsible enough to determine many things about our life. It's turned over to government, and especially here in the state of Hawaii and on the island of Hawaii, we have seen a top-down system of government. From the plantations on, and it's time to change that. It is a bottom-up system because, folks, we need to look at our budget because we're out of money. The feds are out of money, and so is the state.
Okay, Todd?
Following on the budget question, what sort of areas do you perceive as being areas where the budget can be trimmed or adjusted in order to reflect the types of priorities you would like to see?
Okay, trimmed, yes. Well, when we look at the falling property values, Oahu in the paper, I believe it was today, we saw that they said 30% decrease in property values. That's going to transfer into their general fund also. They're going to be losing 30% of the property taxes that they expected because of the values of the land. Or at least the value of the land is now 30% less, but their property tax will remain the same. So what do? We've got to slash that property tax very quickly. It's out of line. We've got to help those people over in the VOG areas. Many of them are having a very difficult time. Their land now is not sellable, and yet it's appraised at a value, and they have to make the determination whether they're going to move or stay. And if they're going to stay, we're going to have to help them as a community with their health needs. And if they're going to move, we're going to have to help them as a community to absorb them on the parts of the island that are not impacted. More compassionate.
One thing
I'm not quite sure if I answered your question, though. What would we slash out of the budget and change? Well, I would have to say we need to change the way we're spending the money. If you look at the budget presently, we're spending 25.6% on public safety, and we're spending 5.9% on combined health, education, and welfare. So what's that translate to? So out of every dollar in our general fund, we're spending 25% on public safety and only 1.5 cents or 1.9 pennies on health. Education, 1.9 cents. Welfare, 1.9 cents. Now we ask, why don't we have any doctors? Well, if we don't respect ourselves enough as a community to spend more than that on health, why would you stay as a doctor? If you don't care enough yourself, why would a doctor think that he could help you? So we need to change that around. We need to really look at how we're spending the money. We need to put that money into health. We need to put it into education. And when I say we need, well, that is sort of an arrogant place to come from. How can I speak to anyone about what they need? But what tells me in my own gut needs to happen is that we need to spend a whole lot more money on people, a whole lot less money on public safety, a whole lot less money on streets and buildings. What good is a new building if you're sick?
Okay, now, well, some of those issues that you've described sound very much like state issues as opposed to county ones. So let's take a look at the $400 million budget, because I know that in the election guide you sort of singled this out. So, if in fact you are elected mayor,
right,
what sort of steps would you maybe be willing to take right out of the starting gate to try to go and reduce that $400 million? Are we talking about hiring freeze, maybe not filling positions at the end of the year when people retire?
What would you do? $400 million, 177,000 people on the island. What's that work out per person that they're going to be obligated to pay into this budget? Now, we're talking about the general fund again, so there's money. I've gotten about that budget. We're not going to have $400 million. We're talking about borrowing $114 million. Besides that, already our debt service is 10% of our budget. What are we going to do? Well, you've got to really look how much money we're going to have to spend, because we're not going to have $400 million, because we're looking at now a lot of folks are making their mortgage payment, finishing up the mortgage payment because they don't have quite enough money on their credit cards. And when that credit card gets maxed out, and that's not going to be too many more months away from now, you're going to find a whole lot of people in desperate trouble to meet their financial obligations. And what are we going to do at that point? It's going to be a mess unless we really put it in front of the people that we've got some serious problems with how much money the county thought it was going to have to spend. Because you remember, this is a budget crafted in maybe the best of times. And in the best of times, you really should be preparing for the worst of times, and we've missed that. We've missed it.
Okay. In addition to the fact that there is a credit crisis that people may be facing with their mortgages and things like that, we're also losing jobs.
Yeah.
And what sort of industries would you target as mayor in order to bring jobs to the Big Island?
We have a new paradigm, and whether we choose to recognize it or not, it's very important that we do, because if we don't, we're going to be crying victim here very soon. And I'd rather be a little bit ahead of that and walk into this new dimension or a new way of doing things with a little bit of grace, trying to hold some grace. What are we going to do? Well, you got to start growing your homes right from your front yard. What do you mean, grow it from your front yard? Meaning you got to be able to build your homes with bamboo, ohia, eucalyptus, be able to weave your roof with palm fronds. How do you create jobs that way? By having people grow bamboo, teach how to use it. HPM and these different companies, as much as I'm a general contractor, and I have enjoyed working with the people at HPM for years. There's a great group down there. I really do. I enjoy those folks a lot. But they're in trouble. Whether they recognize it at this moment or not, they are, because they depend on everything coming from the outside. And if they don't, again, please, when I say these things, I'm speaking of myself and not as if this is, speaking from a higher position. But anyway, they would be very much in their best interest to look at alternative building materials themselves and help with the county in changing the building codes so that we can build our homes affordably.
Okay, let's address the 900-pound gorilla.
Yeah.
And that is solid waste.
Yeah.
And particularly with the East Hawaii landfill now, we know that it's only a matter of time and a very short time before it closes. What sort of proposals are you prepared to support as mayor for addressing how we get rid of our solid waste?
Good.
And is waste to energy part of your solution?
No.
Okay.
No, actually, waste to energy, it took energy to create the waste in the first place. So actually you're talking about putting yourself in a minus scenario. Waste is an interesting word, but the waste problem, as we're going to call it, it's many problems. It's not just one, and we want a very simple answer. We want a one-answer solution. Just burn it. Make energy. Well, the problem with that, Helco's not asking for new energy. They're okay for a while. They don't need it. And it's a lazy solution. We have to, again, this is, when you look at the communities internationally that are at zero waste now, there are some, and at zero oil, okay? And you ask, what is the one thing that you can say that has allowed you to get there, or the one thing that's required for a community to have before they can get to handling their waste problem? And you know what it is? Civil justice. I go, what? Civil justice? What do you mean? Why isn't it more recycle centers? Isn't it more facilities? And they're going, no, it's you have to have a community that feels that they're being treated fairly by the judicial system. And if you look at ours, there's some alarming things. So again, we're spending 25% of our budget on police. We have the highest incarceration rate after referral of our teenagers to the prosecutor's office. We have the highest rate of referrals to the prosecutor's office. We're putting kids in a 3 misdemeanor scenario where they end up being a class 4 felon, and then they're sent off to the correctional facility in Oahu because there's only one, which is now has 2 suits against it for gross grievances of rights, human rights. I mean, they're withholding food. There's been the study that was done in 2004 was alarming. It was called for by the American Civil Liberties Union, and the Attorney General of the United States intervened to study the correctional facility. So how do we get to zero waste? We have to start treating the people fairly within the judicial system. They have to want to recycle because they feel fairly treated. Now that may seem like off the wall, but again, recycling is not the waste problem is not a one answer solution. You just don't go, oh, this machine will take care of all of our needs. No.
Oh, okay. Well, what do you see as the ultimate upside for recycling? I mean, if San Francisco can only reach 69%, even if we match that, they're still 31%.
Yeah. Well, again, it's not a one-answer question. Now, what are you going to do? Well, the first thing is you have to look at what the history of how the island's treated its waste up until this moment. For years, since the plantation days, we haven't cared what we put into black plastic bags and threw in the dumpster. I have cleaned out my garage and put things in that bag that I was concerned about, but I didn't know where else to throw it. And I didn't want to be seen throwing it. So I put it in a black plastic bag, and you throw that paint or those chemicals that you're unsure about because it's difficult to get them to the once a month chemical sort place or whatever, disposal. So we really have to look at what we're using, why we're using it, and also when we buy a product from any of these large stores that have come in, and also our waste is increased proportionately to the large stores that come in. In fact, we have almost tripled our waste in the last few years due to the new stores that we've arrived, Walmart, Home Depot, Kmart. So these people are also responsible for the waste. And when you buy something, you get a lot of packaging that you're not didn't want. It comes with it. The manufacturer needs to help pay for a responsible way of dealing with the byproducts of the product that you care to purchase. And as a corporation, which we are, we're a municipal corporation, remember, so we can pass corporate law which would make it mandatory that they helped. There has to be will to do these things. And it begins not getting into government. You don't just say, well, when I become mayor, then I'll be the man I wanted to be. But right now, I'm going to shake a hand, make a deal, take a promise, because I need to be mayor, because I want to help. And when I get there, then I'll start doing the right thing. It doesn't work that way. I'd rather not have an endorsement in the paper or my picture in the paper if the paper isn't ethical, if I can't trust what it says. And today, when I see the way news is manipulated, and most of our public publications are manipulated, the people are left at a loss for information. Now, I asked the Trib, why don't you guys carry as much news in your on this side as you do on the Kona side? Well, the people in Hilo don't want more news. I said, what? Yeah, in fact, if they want anything, they want more sports. I mean, you're the same paper that wrote on one of your headlines that Big Island residents are fat and lazy. Headline. So when you have your paper having an image of the community as being fat and lazy, where are we at? Again, if we don't respect ourselves anymore as a community to spend more than 1.9 cents on our health, everything else just falls into place, doesn't it? I mean, you just look at it.
Todd?
Okay. The past several years, Mayor Kim's been in office as mayor. Is there anything that he's done that you thought was particularly good that you would like to see continued, or anything that you thought he did wrong that you would like to reverse?
I really don't want to get into talking about Harry Kim. I believe he's probably done the best job that he could. And whether things that I could criticize about it, there are. a lot of things. And are there a lot of good things that Harry's done while he was there? Yes, there are. So I'm just going to leave it at that. Harry is leaving us, and we need not make blame or find who's at fault. It's just best that we look at the problems and begin solution and not be worried about blame. And that's true of the military of Pohakaloa, too, in the DU question. I mean, we're not really talking about DU much, and even though we have some of the highest cancer rates on the island, in the state. And both of them, the highest rates of cancer, one is downwind of Pohakaloa, and the other one is downwind of Pearl Harbor.
Hey, Jasper, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, and aloha.
That's Jasper Moore, candidate for mayor. And for those